Hello everybody, welcome back to some Guild Wars 2. Obviously what we have up here on the screen is the February 11th balance update patch. As I'm reading this, it is the night before February 11th. It's February 10th. So we're going to go through this line by line, and we'll make some comments as we go along. There's a lot to it, so it's going to take a minute or two. So bear with me. So, February 11th, balance update preview. Skip the hellos and everything. General. One of the main initiatives in this update is to reduce the overall strength of survivability via support, aka sustain, that we're currently seeing in the world versus world gameplay meta. While we are happy to see melee damage builds have a viability in large-scale game environment, it is clear to us that the support options that enable this are too powerful. We will be making a functional change to barrier, culling Alacrity access, and starting to tone down boon applications in world versus world. Reduce the barrier cap from 50% of maximum health to 25% of maximum health in world versus world only, so barriers cut in half. Relic of the Flock. Increase the cooldown from 10 seconds to 20 seconds in world versus world only. And Relic of the Rivers. Reduce the Alacrity duration from 2 seconds to 1 second in world versus world only. For Artillery Barrage, they fixed an issue that caused the skill to always strike in the center of the targeted area. Interesting. Alright, so Elementalist. With the addition of Spear, the change to Sphere Specialist, and improvements to Overlord Air and Scepter, Elementalists have been performing well recently in player versus player. This update includes some tuning for those builds to bring them more in line with their competition. Warhorn is being adjusted to make it more potent support weapon in exchange for a damage reduction. Persisting Flames is getting an additional trigger to function better with all Elementalist weapons instead of requiring a pulse fire field. Spear will receive slight damage increases in competitive modes where we haven't seen it take off yet. Here's a huge list of Elementalist things that are going on. So, Fire Grab. Increase the power coefficient versus burning enemies from 2 to 3.5 in player versus environment only, PvE. Frozen Burst. Increase the cooldown from 12 seconds to 15 seconds in PvP in world versus world. Transmute Frost. Increase the cooldown from 3 seconds to 6 seconds in world versus world only. Cleansing Wave. Increase the cooldown from 20 seconds to 25 seconds in player versus player only. Ride the Lightning. Increase the power coefficient from 1 to 1.5 in player versus environment only. Shatterstone. Reduce the power coefficient from 1 to 0.8 in PvE only. Water Trident. Reduce the power coefficient from 20 seconds to 25 seconds in PvP only. Oh, wait, I skipped back, didn't I? Shatterstone. Reduce the power coefficient from 1 to 0.8 in PvE only. Water Trident. Reduce the power coefficient from 2 to 1.6 in PvE only. Air Lightning. Reduce the power coefficient from 0.4, 0.45, 0.5 to 0.35, 0.4, 0.45 in PvE only. Lightning Strike. Reduce the power coefficient from 1.5 to 1.2 in PvE only. Tidal Surge. The skill is now a blast finisher. Water Globe. The water orb created by the skill will now follow the Elementalist instead of traveling in a line. Cyclone. This skill now grants super speed to nearby allies in addition to swiftness. Lightning Orb. Reduce the power coefficient from 1 to 0.8 in PvE only. Dust Storm. This skill now also grants resistance to nearby allies when activated. Blazing Barrage. Reduce the power coefficient from 2.5 to 2.2 in PvE only. Increase the power coefficient from 1.5 to 1.2 in world versus world only. That's interesting. Meteor. Reduce the cooldown from 20 seconds to 15 seconds in PvP in world versus world. Increase the power coefficient from 1.2 to 1.3 in PvP. Volcano. Reduce the power coefficient from 1.26 to 1.1 in PvE only. Derecho. Reduce the power coefficient from 5 to 4 in PvE only. Increase the power coefficient from 1.6 to 1.8 in world versus world and 1.4 to 1.8 in player versus player. Fisher. Increase the power coefficient of 1.15 to 1.13 in world versus world only. Persisting Flames. This trait now also triggers when inflicting burning on an enemy. Increase the bonus damage per stack from 1% to 2%. Reduce the maximum number of stacks from 10 to 5. Earthen Blast. Reduce the base barrier from 1,302 to 800. And the healing power scaling from 0.75 to 0.5 in player versus player only. Overlord Air. Reduce the power coefficient from 0.951 to 0.85 in PvE only. Invigorating Torrents. Reduce the power regeneration and vigor durations from 3 seconds to 2 seconds in World vs. World only. Deploy Jade Sphere. Reduce the power coefficient from 0.35 to 0.25 in player versus environment only. Spectacular Sphere. Reduce the might stacks from 8 to 5 in PvE only. Sphere Specialist. This trait now increases Jade Sphere cooldowns in PvP only. Reduce the boon duration increase from 150% to 100% in player versus environment only. Staunch Auras. Increased the stability duration from 1 second to 1.5 seconds in player versus player only. Fixed an issue that prevented etching from being able to be charged after a certain duration. And also fixed an issue that prevented etchings from being charged when multiple etchings existed at once. So that's it for Elementalist. Bit of a list. We'll move on to Engineer. We're reducing the amount of barrier that support, focus, and scrappers can apply in World vs. World, in addition to other small changes. Duelist Holosmith in PvP will receive boosts with increased healing from heat therapy, changes to Hardlight Arena, and some additional improvements to Elixir Gun synergies, kinetic accelerators, will now trigger when performing Whirl finishers, within limitations. To better align with all of Scrapper's toolbox, Spear is getting a couple of tweaks to be more user-friendly. I find that interesting. I already found Spear to be pretty user-friendly, but we'll see what they came up with here. Conduit Surge. This skill has been condensed into a single dash, reduced the cooldown from 6 seconds to 5 seconds in PvE only. Lightning Rod. Increase the cooldown from 15 seconds to 18 seconds in PvP only. Roiling Skies. Increase the angle of this skill's hitbox. Essence of Animated Sand. Reduce the might duration from 8 seconds to 5 seconds in World vs. World only. Reduce the base barrier from 1,285 to 645 in World vs. World only. Essence of Liquid Wrath. This skill's chain reaction now grants resolution instead of protection in World vs. World only. Interesting. Blob Shot. This skill now immobilizes the first enemy struck. Acid Bomb. This skill now does increased damage on the first pulse. Combat Cure. Reduce the regeneration duration from 1.5 seconds to 1 second in World vs. World only. Bulwark Gyro. Reduce the initial base barrier from 1.140 to 740. The pulsing base barrier from 560 to 410. And the pulsing barrier's healing power multiplier from 0.25 to 0.1 in World vs. World only. Hardlight Arena. Increase the duration from 3 seconds to 6 seconds in PvP and World vs. World. Increase the boon application interval from 1 to 2 in PvP and World vs. World. The duration is no longer extended when used above 50% heat. Instead, the skill now applies barrier to the user when used above 50% heat. Reduce the cooldown from 60 seconds to 45 seconds in PvP only. Heat Therapy. Increase the healing per unit of heat from 30 to 45 in PvP only. Kinetic Accelerators. This trait now triggers when performing Whirl finishers in addition to its previous effects. Whirl finishers cannot trigger this trait more than once every 3 seconds. This trait no longer grants Fury in World vs. World. Interesting. Reduce the might duration from 8 seconds to 5 seconds in World vs. World only. Crisis Zone. This skill no longer applies Alacrity in World vs. World only. So only in World vs. World are they cutting the Alacrity. So not as much as in here, but some big changes, some big changes in there. Guardian. Willbender. Oh gosh, Willbenders. Willbender has been a powerful force in competitive modes lately. In World vs. World, Willbender's movement abilities will receive increased cooldowns to raise the opportunity cost of both engaging and disengaging in battle. In player versus player, we're toning down the amount of area damage it is able to deal with, as well as utility Willbender gained from Spear. On the PvE side, Dragon Hunter is receiving some damage increases to better compete with other elite specializations. Those are all good things. Right now, Willbender is, I don't want to say it's OP, it's very strong, and in the right hands, it's definitely unbeatable, you know. And you find yourself as like a, you know, a middle of the road player like I am, constantly just being like, well, you know, there's not much I can do, but I can try. And that's frustrating, you know, when you just know that the class alone, that player's ability or skill set doesn't dictate how the fight goes. So Guardian, Mighty Blow. Reduce the power coefficient from 1.82 to 1.65 in PvP only. Glacial Blow. Reduce the power coefficient from 2 to 1.8 in PvP only. Zealot's Embrace. Reduce the power coefficient from 1.2 to 1.0 in PvP only. Advancing Strike. The skill no longer slows enemies, and now immobilizes on the first hit instead of the second. Increase the cooldown from 20 seconds to 25 seconds in World vs. World only. Helio Rush. Increase the ammo cooldown from 8 seconds to 10 seconds in player vs. player only. Gleaming Disc. Reduce the power coefficient from 0.8 to 0.7 in PvP only. Solar Storm. Increase the cooldown from 15 seconds to 18 seconds in PvP only. Symbol of Luminance. Increase the cooldown from 20 seconds to 25 seconds in PvP and World vs. World. Reduce the duration of resistance from 4 seconds to 3 seconds in PvP only. Pure of Sight. Increase the minimum damage from 5% to 10% in PvE only. Big Game Hunter. Increase the damage modifier from 20 to 25% in PvP and PvE only. That one's scratched out. Heavy Light. Increase the damage modifier against disabled enemies from 15% to 20%, and the damage modifier against defined enemies from 10% to 50% in PvE only. Portent of Freedom. Increase the stability duration from 2.5 to 3.5 seconds in PvP only. Unhindered Delivery. Increase the stability duration from 4 seconds to 5 seconds in PvP only. Swift Scholar. Increased the quickness duration from 2 seconds to 3 seconds in PvP only. Stoic Demeanor. Increase the internal cooldown from 1 second to 5 seconds in World vs. World only. Rushing Justice. Increase the cooldown from 18 seconds to 22 seconds and reduce the power coefficient from 1.5 to 1.2 in World vs. World only. Flowing Resolve. Reduce the ammunition count from 2 to 1 in World vs. World only. Crashing Courage. Increase the cooldown from 30 seconds to 40 seconds in World vs. World only. Holy Reckoning. Reduce the might duration from 4 seconds to 3 seconds in World vs. World only. In Phoenix Protocol, this trait now applies Resolution instead of Alacrity in World vs. World only. I like how it's instead of and not just getting rid of. It's instead of. And Resolution's great. Alacrity is overpowered. Alright, so we'll move on to Mesmer. In PvE, Dagger and Spear outclass the other power-focused weapons while also making some power-based weapons too strong. We'll be reducing their damage while bringing up main hand sword damage so that all options are closer together and more in line with other builds. The functionality of Evolutionary Defense is being changed to lower its number of boon applications, while also making the choice to use it more intentional. In World vs. World, we want Virtuoso to remain at its highest single target burst damage niche. But it's currently too good at its job. We are lowering Bladesong Harmony's damage while bringing up some area damage skills so that it remains useful in large-scale combat situations. So here we go for Mesmer. I don't really play Mesmer, but this is what it is. Blurred Frenzy. Increase the power coefficient from 0.3846 to 0.45 in PvE only. Blade Call. Reduce the power coefficient on outgoing and returning hits from 0.5 to 0.35 in PvE only. Unstable Blade Storm. Reduce the power coefficient of the storm from 0.45 to 0.25 and the damage coefficient of the blades from 0.66 to 0.5 in PvE only. Mind the Gap. Reduce the power coefficient from 2.5 to 2.0 in PvE only. Illusion of Life. Fix an issue that prevented the skill from returning players with barrier to the down state. Increase the cooldown from 75 seconds to 90 seconds in Wii vs. World only. Okay. Illusionary Defense. This trait now only applies protection when using the second Shatter skill. Increase the base protection duration from 1 to 4 seconds. Increase the protection per clone from 1 to 2 seconds in PvE and World vs. World, and from 0.5 to 1 seconds in PvP. Wow, 1 to 4. 400% increase in time. Interesting. Bountiful Disillusionment. Reduce the Vigor duration from 8 seconds to 5 seconds in World vs. World only. Reduce the Fury duration from 10 seconds to 6 seconds in World vs. World and PvP. Mental Defense. Reduce the resistance duration from 4 seconds to 2.5 seconds in World vs. World only. Flow of Time. Increase the Alacrity duration from 0.75 seconds to 1 second in World vs. World only. See, that should be another swap out. It shouldn't be direct Alacrity. There should be nothing giving Alacrity in World vs. World. Stretched Time. This trait no longer causes Flow of Time to affect nearby allies. It now causes Shattering to apply a boon to other nearby allies. This trait now applies Might instead of Alacrity in World vs. World only. Okay, good. So that does it to yourself. Okay, that's why. Okay. Mirage Mantle. This trait now causes Chaos Vortex to apply Vigor instead of Alacrity in World vs. World only. Okay. Nomad's Endurance. This trait no longer grants additional condition damage. It now increases outgoing damage and condition damage when you have Vigor. Sharp Edges. Increase the damage multiplier from 15% to 25% in PvE only. Bladesong Harmony. Reduces the power coefficient from 0.55 to 0.45 in World vs. World only. Blade Turn Requiem. Increase the power coefficient from 0.3 to 0.5 in PvE and from 0.2 to 0.35 in World vs. World and PvP. Thousand Cuts. Increase the projectile's hitbox size. Rain of Swords. Increase the power coefficient from 0.8 to 1.2 in PvE and 0.66 to 0.8 in World vs. World and PvP. Jagged Mind. Reduce the bleeding duration from 4.5 to 4.0 in PvE only. Infinite Forge. Reduce the damage increase from 10% to 7% in PvE only. We go with Necromancer. Again, a class I don't have down very well. I like Necromancer a lot in PvE. Reaper, I think it is. In World vs. World, support-focused Scourges will see some key cooldown increases to lower their overall output. Thank the Maker. And damage-focused Necromancers will have their damage and boon removal capabilities increased. Well, interesting. Overflowing Thirst will receive a rework to enhance dagger with support capabilities. Soul Shards. Reduce the bonus damage modifier from 50% to 20% and the boon healing modifier from 50% to 20% in PvP only. Extirpate. Increase the power coefficient from 2.0 to 2.25 PvP only. Path of Gluttony. Reduce the dash velocity by 25%. Gorge. Reduce the dash velocity by 25%. Increase the base health cost from 8% to 12% in PvP only. Gravedigger. Increase the radius from 180 to 240. Death Spiral. Increase the angle of the skill's hitbox. Nightfall. Increase the cooldown from 30 seconds to 40 seconds in World vs. World only. Grasping Darkness. Fixed an issue that caused the skill to have a lower cooldown than intended in World vs. World. Devouring Darkness. Reduce the cooldown from 18 seconds to 15 seconds in World vs. World only. Well of Suffering. Increase the power coefficient from 0.65 to 0.75 in World vs. World only. Spiteful Spirit. Increase the number of boons removed from 1 to 2 in World vs. World and PvP. Overflowing Thirst. This trait has been reworked. It now causes dagger skills to grant other nearby allies stack of Taste for Blood. Taste for Blood causes your next strike to siphon health. Executioner's Scythe. Increase the power coefficient from 0.1, 0.15, 0.2 to 0.91 respectively, 1.364 and 1.82 respectively. Serpent Siphon. Increase the cooldown from 30 seconds to 40 seconds in World vs. World only. Sandstorm Shroud. Increase the cooldown from 35 seconds to 45 seconds in World vs. World only. The skill no longer applies protection in World vs. World only. Sand Cascade. Increase the cooldown from 18 seconds to 25 seconds in World vs. World only. Well, that sums up all of the Necromancer right there. Grab a drink of water really quick. Alrighty, Ranger time. In large scale, Ranger, get it? Anyways, in large scale World vs. World combat, Ranger pets are very fragile. This is a long-standing problem that we'd like to address. We are starting to reduce the penalty where your pet is defeated, and we'll keep an eye on the results while we consider other solutions. Untamed will receive a damage increase, and a new way to strip boons to give it better chance in World vs. World. Spirit is being adjusted in both player versus environment and player versus player to help make it a viable option. Eclipse is getting new functionality to help condition-based druid builds function in situations where it can be difficult to generate astral force. Frost Spirit. Reduce the resistance duration from 4 seconds to 2 seconds in World vs. World only. Reduce the cooldown of pet swapping with a defeated pet from 60 seconds to 25 seconds in World vs. World only. Panther's Prowl. Reduce the cooldown from 25 seconds to 20 seconds in player versus player only. Spider's Web. Reduce the cooldown from 25 seconds to 20 seconds in player versus player only. Falcon's Stoop. Increase the power coefficient from 1.25 to 1.375 in World vs. World player versus player. Owl's Flight. Increase the power coefficient from 1.5 to 1.65 in World vs. World and PvP. Drake's Swipe. Increase the power coefficient from 0.9 to 1.1 in PvE only. Wyvern's Lash. Increase the power coefficient from 1.2 to 1.4 in player versus environment only. Cheetah's Strike. Increase the power coefficient from 1.6 to 1.8 in player versus environment only. Beast Sting. Increase the power coefficient from 1.2 to 1.4 in player versus environment only. Wolf's Onslaught. Increase the power coefficient from 1.25 to 1.5 and the final strike power coefficient from 2.5 to 3.0 in PvE only. Warclaw's Engage. Reduce the cooldown from 15 seconds to 12 seconds in PvE only. Predator's Ambush. Reduce the cooldown from 15 seconds to 12 seconds in PvE only. Farsighted, increase the minimum damage bonus from 5 to 10%, increase the maximum damage bonus from 10% to 15% in World vs. World only. Rejuvenating Tides, the skill no longer applies might in World vs. World and PvP. Natural Convergence, the skill no longer applies might in World vs. World and PvP. Eclipse, the trait now increases the amount of astral force gained per strike in addition to its previous effects. Grace of the Land, reduce the might duration from 6 seconds to 4 seconds in World vs. World only. Glyph of the Stars, increase the cooldown from 60 seconds to 75 seconds, and reduce the revive amount per pulse from 8% to 5% in World vs. World only. Exploding Spores, the skill now removes boons from enemies struck. Enemies can only have boons removed by this skill once per cast. Binding Outburst, increase the damage modifier from 10% to 15% in World vs. World only. Natural Fortitude, increase the life-stealing damage from 1,000 to 1,764 in PvP only. And Vow in the Untamed, increase the outgoing damage modifier 15 to 20% and the incoming damage modifier from 10% to 50% in World vs. World only. So there we go for Ranger. Here we are for Revenant. Let me grab some water again. Herald has been a popular pick in instance PvE due to its strength and consistency. Its damage being adjusted to account for this consistency. Spear's utility-focused skill cooldowns will be increased while we improve the potency of power-focused Revenants. Like other professions, Revenant's boons will be adjusted in World vs. World. We are boosting Legendary Assassin stance to make a more viable option next to Legendary Dwarf stance and Legendary Dragon stance. Abyssal Blitz, increase the cooldown from 15 to 18 seconds in PvP only. Abyssal Blot, increase the cooldown from 15 to 20 seconds in PvP only. Echoing Eruption, reduce the ammunition from 2 to 1 in PvP only. Mender's Rebuke, increase the power coefficient from 0.91 to 1.09 in PvP and World vs. World. Preparation Thrust, increase the power coefficient from 0.4 to 0.466 in PvP and World vs. World. Brutal Blade, increase the power coefficient from 0.466 to 0.535 in PvP and World vs. World. Rift Slash, increase the power coefficient from 0.6 to 0.7 in PvP and World vs. World. Inspiring Reinforcement, increase the cooldown from 10 seconds to 15 seconds in World vs. World only. Increase the energy cost from 30 to 40 in World vs. World only. Protective Solace, increase the upkeep cost from 6 to 8. Pain Absorption, the skill now has a 5-second cooldown in World vs. World only. Reposting Shadows, reduce the energy cost from 40 to 30 in World vs. World only. Impossible Odds, reduce the upkeep cost from 8 to 6 in World vs. World only. Jade Winds, reduce the energy cost from 50 to 35 and increase the cooldown from 5 seconds and 10 seconds in PvE only. Reduce the energy cost from 50 to 40 and increase the damage multiplier from 0.01 to 2.0 in World vs. World. Wow. Burst of Strength, reduce the power damage bonus from 10% to 15% and reduce the condition damage bonus from 15% to 5% in PvE only. Shared Empowerment, reduce the might duration from 12 seconds to 8 seconds in PvE only. Reinforced Potency, reduce the damage bonus from 1.5% to 1% in PvE only. Forceful Persistence, increase the damage bonus from 20% to 25% and the Herald skill damage bonus from 7% to 10% in PvE only. Orders from Above. The skill now applies Resolution instead of Alacrity in World vs. World only. Increased, which is really good for the build I have that uses Resolution and Protection for additional damage. Increase the boon duration from 0.75 to 1.5 seconds in World vs. World only. All for One. Increase the damage modifier from 10% to 50% in PvE only. Amnesty of Xingje. Bonuses for activating Legendary Alliance stance skills no longer affect nearby allies. Alliance Tactics and Energy Meld will still affect nearby allies. Nice. Alright, here we go for Thief. Spectre support functionality in Shadow Shroud is being reworked to make it more intuitive and less finicky. In World vs. World, Thief's changes are similar to Willbender's. The initiative costs of skills that allow them to freely enter stealth and move are being increased to create more moments when they're open to counter pressure. Shadow Sap. Reduce the base barrier from 812 to 652 And the healing power multiplier from 0.5 to 0.25 in World vs. World only. This skill no longer applies Might in World vs. World only. Endless Night. This skill now applies Vigor instead of Quickness in World vs. World only. Black Powder. Increasing initiative cost from 6 to 8 in World vs. World only. Death's Retreat. Increasing initiative cost from 6 to 7 in World vs. World only. Death's Advance. Increasing initiative cost from 2 to 5 in World vs. World only. Shadow Step. Increase the cooldown from 50 to 60 seconds in World vs. World only. Shadow's Rejuvenation. Reducing initiative granted when entering stealth from 2 to 1 in World vs. World only. Haunt Shot. Increase the torment duration from 5 to 6 seconds in World vs. World in PvP. Grasping Shadows. Increase the torment duration from 5 to 6 seconds and torment stacks from 2 to 3 in World vs. World in PvP. Thrill of the Crime. This trait now triggers with lower durations when Siphon is used on an ally target. Bountiful Theft. This trait now triggers with lower durations when Siphon is used on an ally target. Traversing Dusk. Reduce the resistance duration from 3 to 2 seconds in World vs. World only. Shallow Grave. This trait now cleanses nearby allies when Siphon targets an ally. Increase the numbers of conditions transferred and removed from 1 to 2 in World vs. World in PvP. Shadow Shroud skills have been adjusted to affect non-tethered allies. Their behavior is unchanged for the tethered ally. Haunt Shot. The skill now heals and grants might to nearby allies. Grasping Shadows. The skill now removes conditions from allies in the target area. Dawn's Repose. The skill now grants barrier to nearby allies at the end of the leap. Eternal Night. The skill now heals nearby allies for each enemy struck. Mind Shock. The skill now grants stability to nearby allies. Very cool. Lots of changes for Warrior. Lots and lots of Warrior. Rifle. I'll get some water really quick, actually. Rifle is being adjusted to provide a smoother gameplay experience, and changes the dual-wielding trait will add an option to the arm specialization to help you stay in the fight. In PvE... Oh, that's awesome. In PvE, condition-based berserkers are raging longer with a chance to last blaze, while Blade Sworn is getting additional power to its gun saber outside of Dragon Slash. Yes! In World vs. World, we're increasing the damage of key spellbreaker skills so they can strip wounds while being competitive with other damage-focused builds. Rampage is becoming more potent to give it a greater potential to play in player versus environment. So here's the rifle abilities. Explosive Shell. The explosion from the skill will now also strike enemies in a small circle around the initial target. Oh, yes! Brutal Shot. This skill will now fire its shot during the invasion instead of after it. Ooh. Rifle Butt. The skill now always recovers ammunition for other rifle skills instead of requiring the enemy to be struck. Striking an enemy will reduce the cooldown of this skill. The skill will now also recharge Kill Shot. Oh! Kill Shot. The skill now deals increased damage against enemies that are affected by crown control or below 50% health. I love all those changes. I love all those changes. Banner of Tactics. Reduce the resistance duration from 2 seconds to 1 second in World vs. World only. Rampage. Increase the cooldown from 60 seconds to 90 seconds in PvE only. Rampage skills have adjusted as follows. Smash. Increase the power coefficient to 1.6 to 2 in PvE. These are all PvE only. Bash. Increase the power coefficient from 1.6 to 2. Uppercut. Increase the power coefficient from 2 to 2.4. Kick. Increase the power coefficient from 1.2 to 2.2. Dash. Increase the power coefficient from 2.4 to 2.6. Throw Boulder. Increase the power coefficient from 2 to 2.4. Seismic Leak. Increase the power coefficient from 1.6 to 3.0. Dual Wielding. The attack speed bonus from this trait now stacks with other attack speed bonuses. While wielding a main hand weapon in your offhand, this trait will also heal the user when they critically strike. This heal is improved if the strike enemy is bleeding. Scorched Earth. Increase the burning duration from 2.5 seconds to 3 seconds in PvE only. Fix an issue that could cause overlapping use of the skill to fail to strike a target. Yeah, that was a big problem. Flaming Fury. Increase the burning duration from 2.5 to 3.5 seconds in PvE only. Last Blaze. This trait now causes raid skills to extend Berserk by an additional second in addition to its previous effects. Nice. Natural Healing. This skill no longer removes boons or conditions. It now heals the user for a percentage of their maximum health. That makes much more sense. Reduce the casting time from 1.2 to 1 second. Imminent Threat. The skill now grants barrier to the user for each affected enemy. Reduce the cooldown from 35 to 30 seconds. Break Enchantments. Increase the power coefficient from 0.5 to 1.0 in World vs. World only. Winds of Disenchantment. Increase the duration from 4 to 5 seconds. Increase the power coefficient from 0.2 to 0.5 in World vs. World only. Swift Cut. Increase the melee power coefficient from 0.7 to 0.9 and the range power coefficient from 0.6 to 0.75 in player versus environment only. Steel Divide. Increase the melee power coefficient from 0.95 to 1.1 and the range power coefficient from 0.6 to 0.75 in player versus environment only. Explosive Thrust. Increase the melee power coefficient from 1.1 to 1.3 and the power coefficient from 0.9 to 1.2 in player versus environment only. Artillery Slash. Increase the damage per ammo cost count from 1.15, 1.76, 2.2 to 1.25, 2.0, 3.0 respectively in player versus environment only. Cyclone Trigger. Increase the power coefficient from 1.5 to 2.5 in player versus environment only. Daring Dragon. This trait no longer applies Alacrity, now only applies Might and Fury in World vs. World. Wow. What a fantastic balance patch. I don't care what anybody says. This isn't a nerf. This is an adjustment that World vs. World really needs. Really, really needs. I've talked about in the past. They're finally making changes. This is a good start. So, yeah. We're looking forward to this. That's all I got for this one, guys. So, thank you so much for watching. It didn't look like there's any more official posts down there. There's some, obviously, player feedback. That one right there. Why? Because World versus World is broken when you're in a large group. That's why. You know, one of these days, just read through all those, see what people have to say. But there we go. Even though there's pages, 20 pages. So that's all we got. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Have a wonderful day.